All right, everybody, you've just tuned in to the Steel City Blitz Steelers Podcast presented by 26shirts.com/Pittsburgh. And we come to you on this Thanksgiving week, fresh off of a Steelers victory on the road in Cincinnati, which, of course, is really nothing new. I think we've won there now 9 years in a row. But what is new is the guy that will be the starting quarterback for the Steelers on Sunday when they host the Cleveland Browns, and that'll be one Mr. Devlin Duck Hodges. I almost grabbed my duck calls today. I had to get up in the attic to get them. I haven't duck hunted in a few years, but I figured that would scare many of the listeners, and not to mention probably have riled up my dogs, and then we would have had a really bad start to the show. So we'll just leave it at that. Joining me on this episode are Ian and Ben. And Ian, great to have you back on the show. It's been a busy fall. You've been doing just an amazing job with the Whippeal stuff, and now that season is over. So glad to have you back. Hope things are well there in the Steel City.
They are. It's an exciting time. I mean, got a new starting quarterback. You know, the most popular guy in Pittsburgh is always the backup quarterback. So this throws me back to my younger days when, you know, everyone wanted to bench whoever was the starter, whether it was Bubby Brister or Neil O'Donnell or Cordell Stewart or Jim Miller and Mike Tomczak, and bring in the other guy. He's got to be better, right? Well, Tomlin, saw his team needed a spark, and say what you will about Mike Tomlin, but he made a move that worked and got us the victory.
Yeah, you know, he did, and we'll definitely get into that here in the next couple minutes. Also joining us tonight is Mr. Ben Anderson. And Ben, how are you on this fine evening?
I'm just fine. I just got home from the gym, so.
Oh, good for you.
Right.
Got that endorphins pumping, little adrenaline going. I'm sure you took a moment to, take some steroids, a few other things like that.
I'll skip that, but yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, in our age, whatever you can do to help. But let's just jump right into it, guys. Tomlin made it official today when he said that Duck, and I love that he calls him Duck. I find it hilarious. Don't know why, but it is. That Duck Hodges will start on Sunday against the Cleveland Browns. Ian, before we get into that decision, take yourself back to Sunday. What were you thinking there in the second half with the Steelers losing 7-3 and seemingly going nowhere? Did you feel that it was coming? Did you just know it, or were you surprised?
I was surprised, actually. I mean, it's something that people on Twitter always talk about, especially this season. Anytime Rudolph does anything bad, it seems like people have been calling for Hodges, especially after, he came in and performed decently well this year after Rudolph got hurt in the first game against the Ravens. And consider it is what it is, right? I mean, it's an undrafted free agent rookie quarterback. Your standard of expectation has to, it's not Ben Roethlisberger coming in off the bench. It's not a first-round draft pick kind of guy. Hodges acquitted himself decently well against Baltimore. He didn't lose the game against the Chargers. I mean, he didn't make any outstanding throws against the Chargers, but he also didn't, do anything to lose them the game. And, but I was surprised. It seemed to me like they were kind of just rolling with Rudolph through the good and the bad, especially after last week in Cleveland, that, there were plenty of opportunities after Rudolph threw any number of interceptions in that game that they could have, some of those were horrible throws that they could have benched him for. And after they went through the first half, we were only down 7-3. I actually, was joking after we kicked the field goal that we may have had an insurmountable 3-0 lead in that game. So it just didn't seem like Cincinnati could really do anything with it. And, they hit two big pass plays to Tyler Boyd that basically got them their only touchdown of the game. But I was kind of coming into that game with the mindset that the defense was probably going to have to either score points or get a takeaway that set us up in the red zone for a touchdown, just because I didn't really have a whole lot of faith in our offense. Without Pouncey, without Juju, without Connor, any number of things. And Rudolph was not good. To be blunt about it, he deserved to be benched. And Hodges made one good throw when he needed to. He threw with timing and anticipation. He hit guys on the run, and it wasn't just that touchdown to Washington. I mean, it was the first pass he threw to Jalen Samuels out of the backfield. He hit him on the run, let him
on the move.
He was moving forward. He was able to get 10 yards and a first down. There was another pass later in the game that he hit. I think it was Deontay Johnson on a slant route that, pass was completed 4 or 5 yards down the field, wound up being about an 11-yard pass play just because he hit him on the run and in stride, and Johnson was able to pick up extra yards after the catch. And that's something Rudolph's really struggled with, is hitting guys on the run. And I mean, Rudolph's, the last throw he made was just absolutely awful. I mean, it was a 12-yard comeback route and just threw the ball in the dirt 3 yards in front of, I think it was Johnson he was trying to throw to. But I was surprised that Rudolph got benched, but the results played out, and it was the right decision to make.
Well, there's no question that the overwhelming difference to me was his ability to actually lead the receiver. And it's something we've talked about on this podcast many, many times with Rudolph. He just does not do it well enough at all. And so credit to Hodges for doing it and getting the team in positions to win the game and ultimately do that. For the record, I had the game predicted. I had 15 I think I predicted 15-12 all field goals, but so I was actually happy to see a few touchdowns on the board. Ben, I know you certainly had to have been thinking that how much longer can this go on? What was your feeling when they made the call to bring the Duck onto the field?
I was kind of surprised. He's clearly not as talented as Rudolph. Okay. He's not. The thing that separates him, my buddy's sitting next to me and he goes, Steelers fans love Hodges because he makes mistakes, and he makes them frequently, but when he makes mistakes, he does it at full speed. You see Mason Rudolph sitting in the pocket, not moving, not avoiding the rush, not having any sense that it's close to him. Not aware of the fact that there's a 6'8" man, within arm's length of him and trying to throw the ball over him, Carlos Dunlap. That first pick, I'm sorry, that was a horrible pick. I mean, you got to move. It was the right decision to try and throw the ball to Washington. He was running to the back of the end zone by himself. So the decision was good. The execution was crap. And that seems to be the thing that's plagued Rudolph's play all year long. And the way that his performance has been trending, just going back, people keep saying, well, it's ever since he took that hit versus Baltimore, he's never been the same. No, that's no.
Yeah, that's not true. Yeah.
No. After the Baltimore game, he came back versus the Dolphins and he played, pretty okay. He did.
Horrible to start, but played very well after.
But the next 3 quarters, he was great. Then he played a little bit better versus Indy. And then versus the Rams, I thought he really took a step. I was like, okay, this guy's actually learning now. He's developing and he's growing as a player. And I'm optimistic now. If he can just maintain this trajectory, maybe by the end of the year, we'll have a competent quarterback. But then against the Browns, he came out and he absolutely stunk it up. Just terrible throws, terrible decisions, terrible throws, bad timing, obviously frustrated. They were getting to him, not just physically getting to him, but they were getting to him emotionally and mentally. And screwing with his game. And then, again, this week, he's got a nice 10-day break. They get a little mini bye, so to speak, after the Thursday game. Comes back, does the same thing. And, I think Tomlin had just seen enough. He was just like, Hodges is not a good backup. I'm sorry, guys. He's not. I know that Ian tried to spray sunshine all over his performance. The guy was 5 of 11, okay? He had one long throw, but most of the yards in that throw were after the catch.
79-yarder. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
That's true, but it's also more than Mason Rudolph had. So I mean, I'm not trying to spread sunshine on it. I'm just saying.
What I'm saying is, if you take away that throw, he was 4 of 10, and that's a shitty day. Okay. He's not a good quarterback. He's not a good backup. He's not that talented, and I think we need to temper our expectations about this and hope that he can just manage the game well enough not to lose. And if Randy Fichtner comes out again and tries to run a bunch of bunch formations, a lot of bunch formations. Sorry for the redundancy there.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to run the ball against 9-man boxes again because the alignment of the defense is such that it's on a par, it's versus exactly mirroring the offensive formation. We're not going to win that game. So Randy's got to pull his head out, and we have to hope that Hodges makes a couple of plays here and there. And that could be the difference. I mean, the first game versus the Browns, I mean, obviously Mason's multiple picks.
Mm-hmm.
You throw 4 picks, you basically give the other team the game. But, I mean, what did Baker Mayfield make? 3 or 4 plays the whole game?
Well, yeah.
That's
Steelers
it.
were down 7 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that was the difference. That was a difference in the game right there. If Hodges can do that this time, they can come out with a W. Okay? And if he does that and they get a win, he'll get another start. And it's going to go that way for the rest of the year. And this guy's a practice squad quarterback. I mean, seriously, he's a practice squad quarterback. Not only did he not make the Steelers team to start the season, nobody called him and said, "Hey, do you want to be on our team?" All right.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's true.
I think we really need to temper our expectations and just look at what he can and cannot do and hope for the best. That was why I was a little surprised that he came in, but not overly, because Mason was just so bad. And it was obvious to me at that point that they were in his head again and that he was expecting to screw up. And that was why Tomlin just stepped in and said, "Yeah, that's it. Have a seat."
Well, yeah, and I know Ian wants to talk, a little Browns defense here, but I do want to ask, and you guys can keep this brief, and then we'll move on. But Ian, why did I noticed that the offense did get a spark when he came in? There's no doubt in my mind there was a pep in the offense's step that was not there when Mason Rudolph was there. What do you attribute that to?
I think Ramon Foster said it pretty bluntly. I don't remember if it was exactly post game, but this week, there was a quote from Foster that came out that basically said, Duck comes in with the, level of confidence and, basically with the attitude of, it only takes one play to make you great. Let's go out and, be great. And I mean, Duck basically at this point has nothing to lose, right? Like Ben said, he's essentially a practice squad quarterback. True. He can go out there and take some risks with the ball. If he screws up, everyone kind of expects him to screw up. Not that everyone expects him to screw up, but
no, I know what you mean.
The level of expectation is not very high for him. Whereas Mason Rudolph being a high 3rd round draft pick, a guy that the Steelers spoke a lot of glowing words about. Even in today's press conference, Tomlin got asked, what did you see in Duck that made you want to keep him around? And Tom was like, we didn't keep him around. We cut him. We had to bring him back because he was the only guy out there that actually knew our offense that we could bring in on a short week. So it's one of those things where, people aren't expecting the world out of him. So when he does something great, I think that does, he has that kind of positivity. And I mean, even just listening to his post-game press conferences, he's got that down-to-earth Southern mentality of like, I went out there, I made a couple throws and we won the game. Like, he's a kind of blunt speaker and but he has that positive attitude. And like Ben was talking about, that I think, the Bengals were in Mason's head, and that confidence or lack thereof can rub off on the offense as well.
Yeah.
Ben, while we're talking about the Bengals, I know you want to get into the Browns defense, but while we're talking about the Bengals, I should have mentioned this before. I would be remiss if we did not recognize the Bengals and their generosity. The Steelers, since Paul Brown Stadium opened in 2000, are 19-3 in Cincinnati. And I just want to thank Cincinnati for giving the Steelers an extra home game every year. I really appreciate it. Sometimes twice when we play playoff games there. So thank you. Really appreciate the hospitality. Thank you so much.
And that was a home game because most of the crowd was Steelers fans.
Yeah, it's I don't even know where to go with that because it's so true. I mean, it really has become Heinz Field West.
It's ridiculous. I mean, I have friends who are like, wait, you went to the was it last season or the season before when I went to the Cincinnati game in Pittsburgh? They're like, you went to a divisional game and you got tickets at face value. I'm like, yeah. How? It's Cincinnati. They never win. Nobody wants to go to that game.
Well,
Nobody cares.
I'm starting to realize why Jazz, friend of the show, Jazz and her fiance, I'm starting to realize why they live in Cincinnati, because they're guaranteed at least one home Steelers game without having to travel every year. So it does make quite a bit of sense. This is, well, I know Ian wants to get into the Browns defense here. So let's do that. The Browns, if I'm not mistaken, against Rudy, played a lot of cover 2 type stuff. And, what do you expect this week, Ian?
Actually, it's mostly cover 1, I think.
Really? I was thinking it was a lot of 2.
No, I think it was a lot more 1. It's basically the same of the Greg Williams defensive scheme, where you've got 10 guys, up on the line of scrimmage essentially, and then one guy, in Dayton.
Yep.
Kind of.
Yeah. Yes, that makes sense. Yes.
And that was a lot of what they did the first time, and they blitzed Rudolph a decent bit. They got pressure, and sometimes it wasn't even blitzes, but bringing 3 or 4 guys from the same side of the line to create mismatches and dropping off. But when you start with 10 guys on the line of scrimmage, you can bring guys from different spots, and it's harder to read. And I expect them to do the same thing against Hodges. That they're gonna bring pressure on him. They're gonna play press man coverage on the outside with only one safety deep, and basically force us to try and beat them down the field. The one thing the Browns did do really well in the first game against us was cover our running backs out of the backfield. That was kind of always Rudolph's, safety blanket was throwing to the running backs. And the Browns did a good job keying on that. And, Hodges, when he played against the Chargers, I have to keep tempering myself to not say San Diego, because I keep wanting to say San Diego, and it's not. But
same here.
When Hodges played against the Chargers, he did throw a lot of passes to James Conner, and Conner had a lot of plays he made after the catch in that game to pick up first downs, and they're not going to have that this time. But they're going to have to throw the ball down the field this game, and do something to try and take the pressure off and push the second safeties back a little bit. The Browns had another helmet-to-helmet headhunting penalty last week against the Dolphins. I think it was Mack Wilson against Albert Wilson. Mack Wilson, the linebacker for the Browns, Albert Wilson, the wide receiver for the Dolphins. But it was a pretty clear headshot that he got fined for, penalized for in the game. I don't know if fines haven't come out.
Oh, it'll be coming.
Yeah, exactly. So it would not surprise me if the Browns were out there headhunting again. But they're going to play press man. They're going to stack the box against the running game and basically try and force Hodges to beat us. Like Ben mentioned, there's going to be throws he has to make to win this game. But at the same time, like Ben mentioned earlier, that really if the Steelers can get Mayfield on the ground, the big plays that the Browns had came when he was able to extend the play, get out of sacks and get out of the pocket and make plays. But if they can get Mayfield on the ground, if they get those sacks instead of those turning into big throws, we could have won that game in Cleveland, or at least been a lot closer. So it's very possible that we have a shot to win this game.
I was reading some interesting stuff on Cleveland home and away type stuff, and they've had a nice little run there of home games similar to what we had not too long ago in the season. And when Baker Mayfield goes on the road, his sack totals go up, his turnover totals go up, and surprisingly, they have less penalties. They're the most penalized team in the league, but they have less on the road than they do at home, which I found a bit odd, but what are you going to do? Ben, what are your thoughts attacking this Cleveland defense? Because, we only put 7 points on the board the first time around, and, we can't keep relying on this defense to pitch a shutout every single week. So they got to score some points. I mean, what are they going to do here on Sunday?
They need to play ball control as much as they possibly can, spread that defense out, because Ian's right. They're going to try and put 10 guys up on the line. And, so basically you don't want to try and bunch them and attack them right in the middle like we did last week. You want to spread them out and try and run misdirection So you get them going the wrong way, and then you just gouge them from that. I mean, if they'll give you 5 yards at a pop because they're going the wrong way against a play, again, similar to what they did versus the Chargers, it can work. It can work. But I can almost guarantee you that is the tape they are studying this week. They're looking at what we did versus the Chargers.
Certainly.
And they're going to try and counter it because that's really, one, the only extensive action that Hodges has had. And two, they know that the Steelers are going to have to rely upon the run game this week. And, I don't know how healthy the Steelers are there. I guess we're going to see what happens. But that's kind of what you have to do. And if you get a nice long pass here and there, fantastic. But you've got to establish the run, and you've got to do that early via misdirection is my feeling. Hodges is going to have a whole week to prepare, but he did against the Chargers as well, and he didn't exactly come out on fire. So,
well, so you mentioned misdirection. Does that mean that you kind of go back to something with Jalen Samuels, or do you try to incorporate Kareth White a little bit more? He touched the ball 6-7 times, or he had 7 snaps and he touched the ball 6 times. Which was kind of interesting. So
you run counters, you run plays where literally everybody's going going to the right side, and the running backs come in across the back of the formation to the left, like they did with Samuels. Maybe you run some Wildcat. I don't know.
I wouldn't run Wildcat, but some of those little pop passes to Deontay Johnson coming across were pretty good plays that they had.
They were nice.
Yeah.
I don't know about Wildcat either. If it kind of depends on the tempo of the game. Okay. If you get something going on the Browns defense and you get them keyed up and they're over pursuing plays, then you absolutely run Wildcat. You do, but you need to get them there first. So you don't necessarily make that part of the game plan. You just have it in your bag of tricks. I agree with Ian, though. I think it's going to be cover 1 all day.
Yeah. What did they show cover 2 early in that game, and they were bringing the safety up? Is that why I was thinking cover 2? I mean, cover 1 makes more sense now that I think about it, but I don't know. Maybe I got to go back and look at it.
The Bengals have always traditionally played a lot of cover 2.
Right. Well, both have orange, so I'm old. Maybe I'm forgetful.
And they're from Ohio and suck, so
Yeah, see, it's all adding up. Thank you. I needed an excuse. Ian, is Randy Fichtner? I mean, you guys have both said numerous times already in our first 15 minutes on the show here about spreading defenses out, but yet we say this every single week, and yet he continues to run bunch formations tight to the formation. He runs heavy. Why is he not willing to spread it out more? What are we not seeing that apparently he is seeing? I know. Yeah.
I'm going to give a really cheap answer here.
Well, that's
I'm going to say that it's not necessarily what Fichtner is capable of calling. It's what the quarterback is capable of running.
Okay.
And neither Rudolph nor Hodges have great arm strength, yet somehow they still seem to insist on throwing these 5-yard out patterns on third downs that they think are going to get completed but are never completed because they don't have the arm strength to get the ball out there on time. But nevertheless, I mean, they're trying to run a lot of curl routes, a couple crossing routes, but they're trying to give their quarterbacks easy throws to make. With the guys facing towards them and they're the hands in front of the face, and you see that. But Rudolph's never thrown with anticipation. Rudolph's always waited for guys to be college open rather than NFL open.
Yeah.
Hodges, to his credit, has a little more anticipation in his throws than Rudolph does. I mean, he's not Roethlisberger. He's not going to throw before a guy comes out of a break.
Right.
But it's one of those things where I think Fichtner is somewhat limited in his game planning by what his quarterback is capable of doing. That being said, his play calling has sucked. So
I gotta jump in here real quickly.
I couched it with one excuse, but the play calling's been terrible.
Yeah,
limited by what his quarterback can execute, but what has his quarterback actually executed well in the last couple of weeks? I mean, even versus the Rams, which arguably that's really Mason's best game this year. I mean, what did he execute well? I mean, one single read throws, where it was like, boom, this is where I'm going with the ball. That's what he did well. And he was throwing against zone defense, and they were easy throws to make. Honestly, they just, it was like, okay, it was nice though to see him immediately recognize what the defense was trying to do before the snap and then get rid of the ball right away. That was encouraging to me about that game. But most of the time since then, he hasn't had the luxury of those easy throws. And part of that, is scheme. I agree with Ian. Finkner has not been good. I don't know what the hell he's seeing. There are a lot of things he could do that would have helped Mason out, including spreading the defense out.
Exactly.
The Browns ran a lot of stunts. I have not seen a team run zone dogs where you overload one side and a defensive end comes back and covers the flat in, I can't remember how long. And the Browns ran that.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Yeah.
But then brought a linebacker as the fourth man. I was like, what?
Is that a product of having a Myles Garrett there, though? I mean,
no,
on the
it was
other
just
side.
A product of, hey, we're going to attack these guys and we're going to be aggressive, and we know we got this quarterback. He's got, I wouldn't say happy feet, but he's definitely not comfortable in the pocket. Where conversely, you've got Baker Mayfield, who, while he's not necessarily comfortable in the pocket, he can escape it pretty easily.
Right.
And what the Steelers have got to do this week is keep him in the pocket. I don't necessarily want to see them pressure him hard, at least
to the point he can escape wide like he did.
Not to the point where he can escape. I like the idea of inside pressure versus Mayfield, getting in his face, hitting him. Even if he, you don't necessarily get the sack, but hitting him, get into his head a little bit. I love that idea, but keep him in the pocket. Make him beat you from the pocket. That's when he's the least dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, just to go back to Fichtner for a quick second, I was listening to NFL radio this week, and Paul Alexander, the retired offensive line coach who was around forever, he brought up Ron Earhart, who both of you guys remember quite well from the Steelers years.
Oh yeah, and he threw a 3-yard pass on 3rd and 7.
Yeah, very much so. But he was talking about what's Rudolph's problem, and he mentioned Earhart in the sense of he said guys get too caught up with trying to get pre-snap reads, and then quick post-snap reads and trying to guess too much. He said, you make your read, your first read. Are there any other colored jerseys there? If there are, you move to your second read, and so on. And it was just kind of fascinating how he was trying to simplify it. And I think what his point is that Rudolph is just the processing just isn't there, and he's just overthinking some things sometimes. But again, if the play calling is not helping you either, and I understand about getting guys in positions to make easier throws and stuff, but by God, spread the teams out once in a while and just run the ball. Just see what happens. I mean, do it to do it. To give it a look or whatever, because it's just driving me insane. But that's nothing new.
I know this is cliche, but I do not. When I look at Mason Rudolph, I do not see a guy whose recognition of what the defense is trying to do is outstanding. He can't read defenses at this level, and I don't know what the hell his problem is. I could not begin to tell you. Maybe he's studying too hard. Tomlin says he prepares, and he's tried to encourage him to relax a little bit, and he won't. I don't know. I couldn't begin to tell you, but he's not processing things very quickly. He holds onto the ball too long. As Ian pointed out earlier, he waits for players to be college open. You're not going to get that many opportunities where receivers are college open in the NFL. It just doesn't happen. There were numerous instances, even on completions, where if he had thrown the ball earlier or placed it better, he would have gotten long gains. But he just, I don't know if he's not thinking it through, or he doesn't recognize it, or if he's incapable of placing the ball correctly, or if he's forcing it, or if his mechanics suck, or if it's a combination of all those things. His footwork is terrible.
It's regressed. And I think it's because of the mental side. I think he's just, that's my opinion.
I think you're right. I tend to agree with you, but I just don't see a guy who's reading defenses very well. And, the receivers, especially in particular, Deontay Johnson, just seems to have a knack for, okay, I'm going to send the DB that way and I'm going to go this way. And Mason's late on recognizing it. And if he could just take advantage of that, I mean, Ben would be having a field day with that kid.
Yeah, great route runner. He's impressed. I mean, it is kind of funny to think about what this team would look like with Roethlisberger. I think it's only natural to make that conclusion or draw that conclusion, but obviously we can't right now. This week, of course, is a rematch, Ian, of a game 2 weeks ago in which really all the talk was about Mason Rudolph getting decked over the head by Myles Garrett. and as it is right now, Marquise Pouncey will not play. Neither will Myles Garrett. Mr. Okunjobi, I believe his name is, he will play after sitting out last week. Do you expect there to be more fireworks in the stands than on the field, or do you think it's going to carry over into this game?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll be there on Sunday, so we can talk about it afterwards.
I'd love to hear the stories.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. I don't really have a lot of stories about Browns fans, mostly because usually when they come to games, they're kind of, just there and quiet, and they support their team, but they're not, they're not there to trash talk, because usually they're coming into the stadium with like a 2-10 record or something.
Right.
And, they don't have a lot to hang their hat on. This game might be a little bit different. They're coming in having beat us the first time this season. I could tell you stories about Raiders fans and Lions fans. Lions fans are dicks, man. It's crazy. But Bills fans, there's plenty of opposing fans that have stirred things up. But I would think that for the most part, Tomlin's probably going to try and send a message to his team to keep it clean. We've got an official this week that's in his second year as an NFL referee. He's never done a Steeler game before. Well, he's done Steeler games when he was an umpire, but not as a
first time as the head official. Yep.
Yeah,
Clay Martin, high school basketball coach in Oklahoma.
Yes. Yep. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes for him. The NFL shifted this game out of a more primetime slot and into the 1 o'clock. So there's other games on. But also, Tomlin rolling with Duck this week also keeps Rudolph kind of out of that circus as well, potentially. Unless Duck gets hurt and Rudolph has to go back in or something like that. But nevertheless, I mentioned earlier that I kind of expect the Browns to go headhunting on defense. That wouldn't shock me.
They've done it all season.
Yeah, that wasn't really anything new against the Steelers, but there were some high-profile ones, obviously, with Juju and Deontay and then Rudolph. But Rudolph multiple times in that game too. I mean, Rudolph got hit in the head a few times, not just the last time by Garrett, but there were some other times
slaps
as well. Yeah, so. We'll see. I'm not expecting a clean game. Like you mentioned, the Browns are one of the most penalized teams in the league, or might be the most penalized team in the league.
They are.
So, So
they're number one, and they lead the league in ejections.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And Demarius Randall's going to play again, the safety that got kicked out of the last game. So it'll probably be a physical, dirty game, and probably remind you more of a, kind of a mid-2000s Bengals game than anything else. So we'll see how it goes.
Ben, is it safe to assume that a young official making his first refereeing appearance in this type of game. Do you think he and the crew go to the flag pretty darn quickly on Sunday?
I don't think it has anything to do with his age. I think they're going to be given instructions by the NFL
certainly
to gain control of that game quickly and basically to make it clear to the players and the coaches involved that if there's anything approaching the kind of play we saw the last time, that there's going to be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that there will be flags, that they will be quick to eject players. And that if, for example, there is any headhunting, that maybe, they can expect not to get a warning, just to be like, yep, you're out.
That's it. You're out of here.
So long.
Yeah.
I mean, Greedy Williams got away with one. He should have been ejected. That second hit to Juju's head. I watched it later. I don't think Morgan Burnett, I don't think it was intentional. I mean, he did hit Juju in the head.
Yeah.
And Juju was technically in a defenseless position. But I didn't see any malice there, where with Greedy Williams, he had an opportunity to change direction and he didn't
do it. Yeah.
He hit him high. I mean, with intention. And I'm like, yeah, that guy should have gotten booted.
So as we close things out here on the Steel City Blitz Steelers podcast, presented by our wonderful sponsor, 26shirts.com/Pittsburgh. We haven't really talked much about the Steelers defense tonight, Ian, but obviously they are going to be very, very key to the success of this team and have been to this point. What are you looking for from them? We talked a little bit about dealing with Baker Mayfield. What about Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Odell Beckham Jr. and company? What do the Steelers need to do on Sunday?
Yeah, actually, I thought in the first game they did a really good job against the Browns running game. I mean, the Browns are starting to do some more things now, incorporating Kareem Hunt more. They're doing some things where they have Chubb lined up in the backfield and Hunt in the slot, and then they bring Hunt in motion across the formation and run like jet sweeps to him, or at least fake it to him and then pitch it to Chubb or things like that. But the Steelers really have done a good job against opposing running games after the Seattle game. They gave up some big plays against Seattle, but after that, they've really done a good job. Even the Ravens game, I mean, we held Lamar Jackson and that rushing attack in check for most of that game after the first couple drives.
Better than most teams have.
Exactly. And, we did a pretty good job against Cleveland the first time. I expect, some more usage of Hunt, because the first time we played them, I think, was his second game back after his suspension. Yep. So it's one of those things where there's going to be some different wrinkles, but the big thing for the defense is getting Mayfield on the ground. When you have a shot at him, you can't let him escape the sack. Ben talked about keeping him in the pocket, which is absolutely true. But we had chances to get sacks that first time around, and I think we only had one or two that game. TJ Watt had one that I can remember, maybe two.
Yes.
But you got to get him on the ground when you get the chance. You can't. He's a slippery guy. You can't let him escape, and that's when he can make plays and hurt you. Is when he gets out of the pocket and escapes. So it's not just keeping him in the pocket; it's also getting him on the ground when you get the chance. And then when he throws bad passes, which he'll do, he'll take chances down the field. He's kind of got that Brett Favre gunslinger mentality. You've got the guys on the back end with Minka and Hayden. Hayden's taken a lot more chances on balls this year. He's leading the team in passes defended. And I think that's sort of a comfort level of having Minka on the back end, that he knows that he can take chances. And if he misses, there's a guy back there who can actually make a stop, unlike in previous years where if the cornerback missed, the guy was probably going to score a touchdown, because there wasn't.
We won't mention any names.
Mike Mitchell. But and it's not necessarily, I mean, Minka's made most of the plays this year. It's not necessarily Minka that has to make the play, but he's always in position to make good plays. He sees the game really well. And the Steelers did some things in that first game too, with I'll say selective doubling of their receivers. They doubled Jarvis Landry on third downs. They double Odell on early downs. So, Odell had the one big catch against us the first time around, but that was pretty much all he did the rest of the game.
Right.
They don't throw to him a lot on third downs, which is weird. You would think if you had a guy like Odell Beckham, you would throw to him in big situations, but they're the Browns. The Browns are the Browns, right?
Yeah, you're right. They do seem to like Landry, and I can't think of the other receiver real quick that they've used in that situation too. But Ben, what are you looking for from the defense? I know you've talked many times, about Mayfield and forcing him into not being able to get out too much. But what are you looking for on Sunday from the D?
Well, they've got to stop Chubb, and they did an okay job with him. I didn't think they did a great job. The Browns overall, and we talked about this right after the game, Browns overall average about 3 yards per carry, okay? If you look at that number, it's like, that's great. But there were some key plays where the defense allowed them to get long rushes that either put them in a position to convert a third down easily or let them convert a first down. And that is where they've got to get a little bit better. Chubb had 2.4 yards per attempt after contact with a Steeler.
Mm-hmm.
That's not great. The Steelers did a pretty good job. They only gave him a yard on average before they made contact, but they've got to make those tackles at that point. They can't let him keep going. That's my one
absolutely
concern.
Right.
And Kareem Hunt's, honestly, he didn't have as good a game as Chubb did, but he's even better at it. He's even better. He's got that incredible balance.
He had some really nice runs against Miami this week, and I know a lot of people are saying, "Well, it's Miami," but
it is.
He bounced off people. He made people miss. That's my concern this week. As much as Chubb worries me, Hunt does too, because he looks like he's starting to get his football feet under him, so to speak. So I expect this game to be close. I hope that we don't run into any issues where flags are going to cost things. But, if guys are headhunting, then, well, so be it. Flags are going to come out. But
Jalen Samuels didn't have many carries versus the Browns, but he actually had a pretty nice game versus them. He averaged 2.6 yards before contact with any Browns, and then another 2.6 yards after contact, which in the NFL, that's really good.
And I think he's getting his legs too, since he was gone for that period of time. He seems like he's getting it slowly but surely.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I would look for both of those guys, and obviously we want our guy to be successful and their guy not to. So, Steelers have just got to make tackles. They've got to make tackles, and the 2 weak links, in that category seem to be Edmonds and Barron, and hopefully, they're better this week because I don't know what and Mark Barron, why is he playing for Vince Williams? Can we see less of that?
Well, that's a whole other thing for another show. Ian, enjoy the game. Take your duck call with you. We expect to hear that many times.
One final thought here.
Make it quick. We're running out of time.
Yeah, the Steelers are currently in the 6th wild card spot, but in in a 4-way tie with Indy, Tennessee, and Oakland. Cleveland's only 1 game behind us right now. If Cleveland beats us, they'd have the head-to-head tiebreaker with 2 wins, both of us at 6-6. But if we beat them, we can really kind of bury their playoff chances this week. We would move to 7-5. They'd be back to 5-7. We'd have a 2-game lead on them, plus an edge in the division. So it's one of those things where Cleveland's kind of playing for their season here, and we have a shot to bury them on our home turf. And but if we lose this game, it's going to be an uphill struggle.
Nope, absolutely. Very well said, and we'll definitely have that and more in the game preview coming up later in the week. So for Ian and Ben, this is Steel Dad, and I'm signing off from the Steel City Blitz Steelers Podcast, presented by 26shirts.com/Pittsburgh. And hey, go Steelers.